Hi everyone, my name is Amon Rapp. I'm an associate professor at the University of Turin in Italy, and today I will recount an article that we published on Tokai last year, which presents a qualitative study on how people experience their behavior change attempts using technology. The main question that drove our research was precisely this: how do people live the experience of behavior change? To answer this question, I will first outline the dominant perspective on behavior change in ACI, then I will present the findings coming from our study and how people use technology to deal with their behavioral matters, and finally I will present what we call the existential model of behavior change, which offers an alternative to the dominant perspective for designing behavior change technologies. ACI behavior change research commonly draws on cognitive or behavioral theories to make decisions about design. On a closer look, these theories share a common understanding of what is behavior and behavior change, which can be summarized in what we call the behavioral model of change. This model sees behavior as an objective and punctual phenomenon that can be observed and acted upon from the outside, and its modification as a surgical intervention that can be almost exclusively addressed to the target behavior. Here, behavior change is conceived as a discrete and isolated event which can be spatially and temporally circumscribed. Differently from these approaches, we decided to shift the focus from the target behavior to be changed, meant as an objective phenomenon that can be quantified, to the lived experience of behavior change and the wider life context in which it is embedded. So, we used semi-structured interviews to explore how people deal with their behavioral matters, and we adopted an existential perspective, looking at behavior change as a matter that intertwines with relevant existential issues of the individual, and also a phenomenological perspective, putting in the foreground the individual's subjective experience. We recruited 23 participants that used a technology to change their behavior and asked them to recount the behavior change attempts that they consider important in their life. The analysis used an interpretative phenomenological analysis approach and focused on each participant's personal recount, paying particular attention to how the participants subjectively appraised the behavior change. We can highlight 4 themes from the findings. First, changing behavior is always meaningful for the participants. This means that they always connected the target behavior in the process of change to matters that have a personal and often existential value to them. In other words, behavior change always points to additional meanings that are rooted in their internal dynamics and intimate life. For example, one individual might want to do physical activity because she believes that it is a way to improve herself. Another individual might want to exercise more because it is a means to exert control over her life. Another one might wish to be less sedentary because she wants to be recognized by others. All these meanings matter much more than the behavior change per se. Technology, however, rarely accounts for these meanings, and in this way it is not able to contribute to the sense-making activity that the person needs to enact about the behavior that she wants to change. On the right side of the slide, you can find some examples extracted from the interviews. So, the second theme revolves around the fact that changing behavior is embedded in life. Participants highlighted that their endeavors in modifying a behavior are intertwined with a network of practices, routines, and relationships that may favor or hinder the process of change. So, the participants' willingness and effort in starting and persevering in the process of change is heavily influenced by this network of mundane matters. The quotation on the right, for example, reports on a participant that highlights how his oscillations between quitting or starting smoking were tied to what happened in his life from time to time. These circumstances are not ancillary details, but are central parts of the process of behavior change, which is not a local event for the participants, but is embedded in their life. Technology, however, scarcely considers the links between the target behavior and the wider life circumstances. The focus on these technologies is on the behavior to be changed, whereby every life aspect that is apparently distant from it is cut off. The third theme revolves around the fact that behavior change evolves over long periods of time. The process of behavior change cannot be circumscribed to well-defined boundaries being rooted in the even distant past of the individual and projected toward the future. It's a temporality that may point to different ages of the person and even to her entire life course. For example, efforts put in dieting may accompany a person's entire life course and date back to her distant past, and the meanings that a person used to ascribe to eating in the past may influence her present behavior change attempts. Technology, however, technology use evolves over time as well, but mostly targets the present behavior. Most participants highlighted that their use of technology changed over the years, paralleling the transformations for which the process of change has been undergoing. However, the technology that participants used seems not to be designed to fully account for the flowing of life. These systems mostly focus on the present target behavior, ignoring how it came to matter to the person. If you look at the example on the right, we may see that by not recognizing the participants' life experiences and existential matters, that technology may prompt interaction modalities that reconnect her eating routines, the participants' eating routine, which past undesired meanings, pushing away her willingness to change. So, on the basis of these study findings, we defined what we call the existential model of behavior change, which aims to become an alternative to the dominant model that we have outlined in the first part of this presentation. The model gives value to the internal meanings that people develop throughout their lives and accounts for their existential matters that are intertwined with their behavior change attempts. The model highlights that the behavior change process is influenced by, first, the meaning that a person ascribes to the target behavior and the process of change. Second, the life circumstances in which the behavior change attempts take place. Life circumstances are all those everyday conjunctures that the individuals consider to be intertwined with the process of behavior change. Third, the lifetime in which the behavior change unfolds. Lifetime is the time that is experienced by the person in her everyday life, and may point to different ages of the individual, and even to her entire life course. Here, it is worth noticing that both the life circumstances and the lifetime are meaning-laden, so that they have a personal and often existential value for the individual, as the behavior and the behavior change has an existential value and a personal value for the individual. So, you can find in the Tokai paper a lot of other details about the model, how we can use the model in design, and also a variety of design implications following from the model that we do not have time to recount here. So, thank you for your attention, and here you can find the details of the Tokai paper that we published in 2023. The title is Exploring the Lived Experience of Behavior Change Technologies Towards an Existential Model of Behavior Change for ACI. Thank you again, and goodbye.